Canada, a country north of the US border considered as one of the United States' closest allies and trading partners, is now threatening to cut electricity they supply to parts of the United States if push turns to shove. Let's hear the head of the largest province in Canada, the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford.
Today, I'm writing to every senator, every congressman and woman, and the governors from New York State, Michigan, and Minnesota, telling them that these tariffs persist. If the Trump administration falls through on any more tariffs, we will immediately apply a 25% surcharge on the electricity we export. We will not hesitate to shut off their power as well.
So how did we get here? I mean, until this moment, not many people even knew Canada supplied electricity to some parts of the US. Let's break it down. For decades, Canada and other US trading partners have taken advantage of the United States in trade relations. They impose high tariffs on US goods imported into their countries while benefiting from the relatively low tariffs the US place on their exports. This imbalance has allowed these nations to flood the US market with their goods, while making it expensive for American goods to be sold in their countries, also while putting American industries at a significant disadvantage. President Donald Trump is here to change all that. He has made it clear that correcting this unfair trade dynamic is a top priority, and he won't back down in his bid to restore fairness and protect American industries. At least that's along the lines of what President Trump has been saying for some time now, over and over. Let's hear him.
Other countries have used tariffs against us for decades, and now it's our turn to start using them against those other countries. On average, the European Union, China, Brazil, India, Mexico, and Canada, have you heard of them? And countless other nations charge us tremendously higher tariffs than we charge them. It's very unfair. This system is not fair to the United States and never was. We have been ripped off for decades by nearly every country on earth, and we will not let that happen any longer.
The Trump administration, aiming to address what it views as unfair trade practices by U.S. trading partners, announced plans to impose higher tariffs on countries the United States trades with, including Canada. This decision triggered immediate backlash and retaliatory measures from affected nations, resulting in a trade war between the U.S. and its trading partners. Canadian officials have consistently argued that these new tariffs harm not only the Canadian economy, but also U.S. businesses and consumers. In this video, we'll explore how this trade conflict is reshaping the U.S. economic landscape, its implications to the future of the U.S.-Canada relations under President Trump's leadership, and the potential for power blackouts in parts of the U.S. that rely on Canadian electricity if tensions do not de-escalate. Let's get into it. The long-standing trade relationship between Canada and the United States has faced unprecedented strain since 2025. The strain began when U.S. President Donald Trump announced a 25% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum imports, citing the need for fairer trade practices and national security concerns. The imposition of the tariffs by the U.S. on Canada sent shockwaves across North America. Such a severe measure was unprecedented between two nations that have historically been close allies. Canadian officials have consistently argued that these tariffs harm not only their economy but also U.S. businesses and consumers. In response to the tariffs, Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, Canada's most populous province, took an unexpected and bold stance. He announced they would impose a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to several U.S. states, which includes Michigan, Minnesota, and New York, and that cutting off electricity entirely was an option they had on the table to use as a tool if need be. This surcharge was intended to generate revenue to support Canadian businesses and individuals impacted by the U.S. tariffs. This move was seen as a direct retaliation against the U.S. tariffs and a demonstration of Canada's willingness to use its energy exports as leverage. Further escalation. On Tuesday, March 11th, 2025, President Trump announced he would double the planned tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum from 25% to 50%. In a post on Truth Social, Trump stated that the additional 25% tariff would take effect immediately. He justified the decision as a direct response to Ontario Premier Doug Ford's 25% surcharge on electricity exports. With the prospect of a 50% tariff on steel and aluminum, Canada made a strategic decision to retract the proposed 25% surcharge on electricity exports. This move was seen as an effort to de-escalate tensions and avoid further economic fallout. In response, President Trump rolled back the additional 25% tariff increase, reverting to the original 25% tariff, which officially went into effect on March 12, 2025. While the immediate crisis was averted, the underlying tensions between the two nations remain unresolved. The 25% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum continues to strain bilateral trade relations, and the threat of further escalation looms large. Premier Ford has made it clear that cutting off electricity exports remains a card on the table if the US fails to address Canada's concerns. Ontario's premier has warned that Canada could cut power exports to certain US states, potentially causing blackouts if the trade dispute does not de-escalate. In this video, we'll examine how this trade war is reshaping the economic landscape, its implications for US-Canada relations under President Trump's leadership, and the potential consequences of prolonged conflict, including the risk of power shortages in some US regions, potential impacts of a power cutoff. The possibility of Canada cutting off electricity to the US has raised alarm bells across North America. Such a move would have far-reaching and severe consequences for the affected states, businesses, and residents. Here are some of the potential impacts: economic disruptions. Businesses, especially in manufacturing, technology, and healthcare, rely on stable power. A blackout could halt production, disrupt supply chains, and cause significant financial losses. Prolonged outages could lead to layoffs or temporary shutdowns, increasing unemployment. Market volatility could rise as investors react to the uncertainty. Public health and safety. Hospitals and clinics depend on uninterrupted power for life-saving equipment and refrigeration. Outages could endanger patients and strain healthcare systems. Emergency services, including police and fire departments, rely on electricity for communication and operations. A blackout could hinder crisis response. Water treatment plants require power. Outages could disrupt access to clean water and sanitation. Daily life and social impact. Families would struggle with heating, cooling, food preservation, and access to basic amenities like lighting and internet. Public transportation systems, including electric trains and traffic control, rely on power. A blackout could paralyze transit and cause traffic chaos. Communication networks could fail, making it difficult to stay connected or access emergency information. Energy market instability. A sudden reduction in electricity supply could cause energy prices to skyrocket, increasing costs for households and businesses. The US power grid would face additional strain, potentially leading to rolling blackouts in other regions. States relying on intermittent renewable energy sources like solar or wind might struggle to compensate for the lost supply. Political and diplomatic fallout. Residents in affected states could blame both governments, leading to political pressure for resolution. Cutoff could deepen the rift between Canada and the US, complicating future cooperation on trade, energy, and security. Other nations might view the US as vulnerable to energy disruptions, potentially affecting its global standing. Economic concerns and the risk of recession. The ongoing tariff dispute has rattled investors, consumers, and businesses on both sides of the border. Economists warn that the hyper-focus on tariffs could undermine economic stability and potentially trigger a recession. The uncertainty surrounding trade policies has eroded confidence, with many fearing higher costs of living and reduced economic growth. For Canadians, the cost of living has already become a central concern, and the US tariffs have only exacerbated the issue. As one analyst noted, if the tariffs are imposed upon Canada, we face the real prospect of a recession, depending on how long this situation persists. The path forward. The recent developments highlight the fragility of the Canada-US trade relationship and the potential consequences of escalating tensions. While both sides have stepped back from the brink of a full-blown trade war, the underlying issues remain unresolved. The question now is whether the two nations can find a path to reconciliation, or if the cycle of tariffs and retaliatory measures will continue to destabilize North American trade. Canada's threat to cut off electricity exports is a dramatic escalation in the ongoing trade dispute with the US. While the feasibility of such a move is debated, the message is clear. Canada is prepared to take bold action to protect its interests. What do you think? Could Canada follow through on its threat if the need arises? Or was this a strategic bluff to force the US to the negotiating table? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.